It's worth taking a moment or two to familiarize yourself with the way Adobe's designed the interface in Premiere Pro and the way that the different panels move around and adjust, and you can create your own workspaces, your own layouts for those panels. Let's just take a little look at how that works so you can find your way around, and I suppose to begin with so that it's easy for you to find your way back again and reset everything to a recognizable starting point. First of all, you'll notice that around each of the panels here, I can hover with the mouse to get a double-headed arrow, and I can click and drag and adjust the size of these panels. You'll notice that you generally won't see any of the background at all. Premiere Pro makes the maximum use possible of the space on screen, so everything resizes to fit. Now, I've presented this on stage many times as a squeezy interface design. I'm not sure that's the technical term. But the net result is that you can move things around and adjust them very, very easily. You'll also notice that every panel inside of Premiere Pro has a name at the top. It's got a tab where you can click and choose that panel. And also that each of these panels tends to have, if I get the metadata, for example, it's got a little grab handle. It's a series of dots, like a little tiny stack next to the name. You can only see it if it's the active panel within the frame, and a frame is this area within which all of these panels are sharing space. A frame can have a single panel or multiple panels in it. I'm going to click on this little handle and drag, and you'll notice that as long as I don't let go of the mouse button, I'm getting a highlight that indicates where the panel's going to go when I release the mouse button. So here, for example, if I release the mouse button in the middle of this panel, there we are. My metadata panel is now sharing the frame with the program monitor. If I want to, I can click and drag, and this time, if I hold down the Control key on a PC or the Command key on a Mac, then I'm getting a floating panel, and I'll just leave that floating there. And you can see, of course, on a low-resolution screen like this, having floating panels isn't particularly constructive. I've got my program monitor floating around, and I can't really see anything behind it, but that's because I'm working at a low resolution. Let's just pull this back, and let's just return the metadata panel. If you were working at a higher resolution, you'd probably find there are times where you'll want to have things floating, and there are times where you want to move stuff around. One of the really lovely features of Premiere Pro, and the interface in particular, is that you can do this with just about any panel you like. So here I've got two sequences, two edits that I'm working on at the same time. If I want to do a more visual comparison, I can drag one of these down to the bottom, and there the interface is now split so that I'm seeing both of the timelines at the same time. Now, I can't gang them together. I can't lock them so that if I move one, the other one moves, but I can get a visual indication of how these compare. This is particularly useful if you're making backups of your sequences while you're working, and you're finding that something's gone wrong and you're not quite sure what. You can open both versions, one above the other, and see very easily where the differences between them are. You can see where you've made a mistake with the edit. It's extremely useful. You'll also notice that the panels, almost all of them, not the audio tool here, although maybe if I resize a little bit, no, it doesn't have it. Most of them have this little X at the right-hand side of the tab. And if I click on the X, it closes that panel. I can reopen sequence panels by double-clicking on them, and I can open other panels in the interface, perhaps, for example, the metadata panel. If I close this, by going to the window menu and selecting it there. Let's just imagine that I decide having the metadata panel floating in the middle of the screen in exactly this way is just the layout that I need. Let's say this is just the way I want to work in Premiere Pro. Well, in that case, I can go to the window menu, I can choose Workspace, and I can choose New Workspace. You'll notice there are a series of standard workspaces that are installed with the application, and you can't get rid of these. So if you're ever watching a tutorial or just trying to remember how to do something, don't be afraid to go back to one of these default layouts, because you'll very often find that when you're watching videos like the ones you're watching now, that the default layouts are used, and it's an easier way to find your way around. I'm going to choose New Workspace, and I'm going to call this Metadata Prominent. Okay, and there is my workspace. So now if I go back, I can choose editing, and of course I need to reset this workspace because I changed it while I was in the editing workspace. And of course, Premiere Pro is just going to update and remember. So let me reset current workspace. Yep. And now I can go to my workspace menu and I can toggle between my metadata prominent workspace, super useful, but there it is, and the original editing workspace. And as you can see, just be aware that if you do make changes, say for example I resize my two viewing monitors, if you do make changes, then they are going to be stored with the workspace. If I go back and then go back again, you can see I've got my mismatched monitor sizes. So just be aware that if you make changes and you don't want them, you're going to have to go back to the workspace menu and reset. And another little thing which is kind of nice is we've now got a new version. If I make the audio meters float here, there's a new version of the audio meters that automatically change depending on which shape you make them. So if you make them tall and narrow, then you get your level meters vertically, and if you make it wide and short, you get them horizontally. And here, for example, I could drop this into the top of my timeline panel. A little bit dinky on the screen here, but I can get nice long audio monitoring right there. And of course, what have I done? I've updated my editing workspace that way, and I really should have made a new one. In any case, I'll reset, and I'm back to the way things should be.